Self-awareness is generally considered to be a good thing. If you are self-aware, you know what you want, and you also know how other people see you. And this knowledge is really valuable in making good decisions, particularly when it comes to relationships. You know how to make the best impression with other people, but you also know what will actually satisfy you, what will make you happy. Where a lot of people, they don't know how they come across to other people, and they often put them off and alienate them. And they don't know what they want, and they find themselves seeking things that ultimately destroy them. And so there's enormous value in being self-aware. But there's another term which sounds very similar to self-awareness, and that's self-consciousness. Now, on the surface, if you just look at the definitions of these words, is self-awareness, self-consciousness, they're literally the same thing. Like consciousness and awareness are the same thing. But clearly we don't use those terms in the same way, because when we say self-conscious, we usually mean something bad, while self-awareness, we talk about something good. Now, self-consciousness is usually associated with feelings of shame, embarrassment, and guilt, or agoraphobia. You're afraid of other people seeing you or being out in public and being on display. And so, how is it that you've got these two things that on the surface, just looking at the words, the terms, they mean the same thing, and yet one's good and one's bad? And I find it really interesting because people who are self-conscious, while they tend to be people who have very high anxiety, high neuroticism, and very anxious, usually very socially anxious, they are generally more self-aware. They're more aware of how other people see them. Now, they might have a very negative view of themselves, and they exaggerate how other people see them in a very negative way, but they are actually self-aware, and this is usually like the pathological, the bad self-awareness. And so, as a therapist, I'm really interested, like, why is self-awareness sometimes like a really positive thing for people, where they go, oh, that's how I come across to people, that's why they don't like how I talk and the things I do. Now I understand that. I'm going to be more considerate of other people and what they're looking for, and get to a win-win, as opposed to the self-consciousness of like, oh my God, they're going to see me. They're going to see right through me. I'm a fraud. And what's going on there? Why is it this good positive? And the answer I've come to conclude is how one feels about one's feelings. So you might have, we have feelings. You might be afraid of something, or just say you're afraid of loud noises. Like, loud noises really, they agitate you, they upset you, you can't think straight, so you're afraid of loud noises. But you know that most people don't have an issue with loud noises. In fact, a lot of people deliberately seek out loud parties and places. And you might think, there's something wrong with me because I'm not normal. I'm not like other people, most people who like loud noises and big parties with loud music. And if you believe that, if that's your belief that it's wrong to feel afraid, then you actually start to feel afraid of being afraid, or you feel embarrassed or guilty of being afraid. And this is a feeling about a feeling. It's kind of like you're judging your own feelings, you're second guessing yourself, because you're like, well, I feel afraid of loud noises, therefore there's something wrong with me, I'm bad, I'm a bad person, that's shameful. And this is what self-consciousness is. It's kind of like, I'm aware of myself, but I judge myself. And it can happen with almost any feeling. Like, you can say, some people, like, there's a really big thing on so-called negative feelings. That's a judgment in itself. So feelings like anger and hatred, for example, that these are universally condemned. These are bad feelings. And if you're a person who feels angry or hatred, that really intense, powerful feeling, then you're a bad person automatically because you have these bad feelings. And so a lot of people feel self-conscious that when they feel angry or hatred, that, oh, I'm a terrible, awful person because I feel these things. And yet, interesting, that's not universal, because other people, they have a positive judgment of these feelings, and they say, well, I'm very proud that I'm angry. I'm very proud that I'm angry with this injustice, this outrage in the world. I'm very proud to hate these people because they're bad people. And so how you feel about your feelings has a huge impact on your relationship with yourself. And when I talk about self-awareness, I'm usually kind of promoting this idea of, observe yourself, don't be judgmental. There's positive in everything. Like your feelings aren't like good or bad. And this negative positive emotion thing, I think that's rubbish. I think it's a load of trash. Don't listen to anyone who tells you about negative and positive feelings. So feelings are just like colors. You don't have bad colors and good colors. Like you have colors you don't like and colors you do like, but you don't have like the evil red or the pure and beautiful green. You don't have these moral judgments of colors. Colors are just information that your eyes are receiving. Likewise, your feelings are just information. They're informing you about how you feel about something, your relationship with something. And with people with self-consciousness, though, they do have this category, this moral judgment going on about their feelings, like, oh, I should like this person, but I feel embarrassed that I don't like them, or I should be more... Should is always this moral word. It's a very loaded statement. I should, you must, you ought to. And these judgments are causing that person to be at war with themselves, because that's what self-consciousness is. You're attacking yourself. You're a bad person because you feel this way. And it's really unhealthy. Like, it's very hard, like, to speak in public if you have this judgment of like, oh, I shouldn't enjoy this, or I shouldn't be happy to be here. Because a lot of people feel like they shouldn't be allowed to be happy. That's another one. It's not these negative emotions can be quite bizarre, because some people feel that ashamed to be happy. Like, I'm really happy I got my way. I'm really happy I got what I wanted, because they feel like they're not allowed to have good things happen to them, and so they feel self-conscious about good things happening to them. And this feeling about feelings thing, it is often a very crippling thing for a lot of people who second guess their feelings. And my advice to anyone who's in that situation where they're afraid to feel something because they've been told, and I think the example of hate's a pretty good one, because hate is universally condemned, like left, right, center, religious, non-religious, like it doesn't matter. There's just this hate's bad, it's always bad, and you see in the media and everything, hate's always bad. And it's a strange thing to me, because every emotion exists for a purpose. Like, if hate was useless, you wouldn't have it at all. There's some kind of value in it. And I actually think there's some surprisingly spiritual aspects to hate. I should do a video about hate. I'll do it. I'll probably get banned, by the way, because it's so universally condemned if you say anything good about it. Oh my gosh. How can I might just quickly do a small segue here. So the reason why like hate can have a good thing is that if you have a really bad habit in your life, like you keep smoking or you keep drinking. I'll use drinking, but you keep drinking, you get drunk, and you gamble all your money, or somebody else, you steal money from your friends, and you just become a really vicious person when you're drunk. It's very hard to try and change that behavior, but if you absolutely hate the way you are when you are drunk because you've been drinking too much, and you hate that behavior, and you hate that you've done that to yourself, that is a very powerful transformative energy that you can use to change your life. And a lot of the time people, they don't change their habits and behaviors in their life until they're so sick to their stomach that they hate what they're doing. And in that sense, it's a powerful way you can change yourself. And so I kind of caution people to make these hasty judgments. That's always wrong to hate. And another thing is that you can't, if you want to actually have any kind of major change in the world, you can't just like, look, I don't like rapists, I don't like murderers, I don't like thieves, I don't like liars. And if you just say you don't like it, it's like you kind of like, yeah, well, I'll support, other people doing it, but I'm not going to actually do anything myself to do that. I'm just going to, other people can take care of those things. And it's, you don't really have the energy, the activation, where when you say like, look, I hate criminals, something has to be done about criminals, rapists need to be stopped. There is a passion, a motivation, a drive to actually do something positive in the world, to make a difference, to change things. And a lot of people say, well, if you hate, you can't love, and it doesn't make sense. And I am suddenly having all these thoughts about the end of Star Wars, Return of the Jedi, like the third of the original story in the original trilogy, because there's an ending there that doesn't make a lot of sense to me, because which may actually come back to self-consciousness. I'll bring it all back together. So Luke Skywalker is confronting his father, Darth Vader, and Darth Vader and the Emperor, they're trying to get him angry, to feel hate. And because allegedly this goes to the dark side of the Force. But what actually ends up happening is that Luke gets so provoked he loses his cool, and he starts smashing and bashing, and he just pummels his father into submission. Not with skill or finesse, but just this blind rage, this hatred of what his father's become and what he's doing to him and who he's serving. And he ends up actually defeating his father, chopping his arm off. And then in the end, it's like, oh, I let go of my hatred. And it's like, but it's really confusing, because your hatred allowed you to defeat this foe, to best him, right? And now, hatred's a bad thing. When if you hadn't, you probably would have died. Almost certainly would have died. Everyone would have died. Everyone would have been enslaved. And so, simultaneously, it's this judgment that's a bad thing, but it's a good thing at the same time. And it has never made sense to me as a kid, and it still doesn't make sense to me today. Well, I mean, this is the whole thing of like, you're just automatically condemned if you promote hatred, because we're all meant to be friends, we're all meant to love each other, no one hates us. And it's a really self-serving thing, because like the evil people, and this is Star Wars and world, they tell you not to hate. This is the virtual psychopath. I've talked about this before. The virtuous psychopath who says, don't feel hatred, don't feel anger, don't feel those bad feelings. You've got to love me. You've got to accept me for who I am, even though I beat you, I lie to you, I steal you, and I steal from you, and I harass you. You've just got to forgive me anyway. And that's what I suspect when I hear people say that you can't hate anyone, because what they're saying is that you must always have one hand tied behind your back. You can never have a fair fight with me, because I wouldn't stand a chance. That's basically what the bad person's saying. And if they can convince you to feel ashamed for feeling that hatred, which is that intense anger, then they can make you feel ashamed for protecting yourself. They can make you feel ashamed of self-respect. And they've basically beaten you. They've crushed your will, your resolve to rebel against them. And so there's positive in everything, and this self-consciousness where you're judging yourself by your feelings is not actually helpful. I'd say it's pathological. You want the self-awareness. And just to a disclaimer, because people might try to mince my words and turn them against me, I'm talking about feelings and I'm talking about perspective. I'm not talking about actions. Like, actions are a completely different thing. Your actions, how you behave. Like, you can hate crime. You can hate like thieves, right? And you can, but that's how you feel. But how you act is very differently. So you could you channel that anger, that hatred into putting up surveillance cameras to catch thieves, or putting together a neighborhood watch thing, helping your neighbors be aware of the dangers, and maybe develop a close-knit neighborhood. That's a way you can use your hatred into a positive, productive way. But you could also use that hatred, of course, in the bad way of just like, oh, I'm just going to be like Batman. I'm going to be a vigilante in the streets and just murder people in cold blood who I suspect might be thieves. And that's a very negative way of dealing with it. That's a poor way of handling it. And that's all to do with actions. But when it comes to feelings, you can't do either. Like, you can't do the good or the bad if you're embarrassed to have that feeling. And so I think it's important that you work on accepting your feelings as they are. Don't judge your feelings. Don't be afraid to feel afraid. Don't feel ashamed to be angry. Just observe these feelings and try to understand them, and try to understand that if these feelings weren't useful, you wouldn't have these feelings at all. Like, nature just prunes away all the things you don't need. So if you didn't need to feel these things, if they weren't important for your survival, you would never feel them. You wouldn't even have them to begin with. And that, have some respect that your feelings are there for a purpose. They're there to teach you something. And how you act, what you do with those feelings, is a completely different question. And that's where the morality comes in. Morality doesn't come into your feelings. Like, you're not a bad person for feeling something. You're a bad person for what you do. Anyway, I hope that helped clear up a few things. Until next time, Prospera ad Astra.